I'm going to take advantage of you, Caroline, and when I get to names, you can fill it in better Arabic pronunciation.
Oh, okay.
So my Spanish Portuguese side is showing through. Good morning, everybody.
I'm jealous of your Spanish Portuguese side, I'll tell you.
Well, some of that's rusty too. We're very pleased this morning to have an opportunity to speak with Taghreed. I can't do the sound. Taghreed Najjar from Jordan, who is both an incredibly prolific writer and a publisher, founder of Al Salwa. How's my accent on that, Al Salwa?
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
That's an easy one, Julie.
I was hoping then that I got it. Taghreed is an award-winning writer, again, founder of the publishing house, translated into many languages. We had a chance to meet in Jordan in the fall, and because UWM has a new international children's book collection, we asked if Taghreed would do a short interview with us. And so we're really pleased to have you here. So thank you.
Thank you.
Caroline and I are going to trade off questions. And I just wanted to start by asking about your writing. You've been over 50 books, I believe, and having seen, you've done everything from children's to young adult. We have a couple of your books in our collection right now. Where does the inspiration come from? When did you start writing? What inspires you?
Well, there are almost 90 books, Julie, now. So
I needed more reading website.
You know, Google always keeps everything forever. So in one interview ages ago, I said 50 books. And now every now and then, you know, people check this and they say you have 50 books. No, I have almost 90 books. But I've been writing for a very long time, over 40 years. So, I mean, 90 books is nothing that time span. And as you said, I've been writing, I started writing picture books for children. And I thought that this is where I belong. I loved writing picture books for children. I felt I connected with them, and I loved the world and their innocence and all that. And but then at one point I got the idea for a book, which I thought needed to be longer. And so I took courage and started to write for an older age group. And the book was very successful, so that gave me encouragement to go on writing. And now I also write for YA, young adults also. So this is the range. My inspiration usually comes from things around me. Like I have a whole series that was inspired by my daughter when she was 6 years old, and she was very naughty and all that. So that the whole series is about her. And other than that, sometimes it's just like an image somewhere or something that I see. For example, you know, there's one of my most well-loved books is the Watermelon. And I have it in translation here to show you. And this book was inspired by me walking in the street and seeing watermelons. And then there was this huge, very big watermelon. And I said to myself, oh, that's a great idea for, you know, to write a story about. And I wrote the story, the watermelon, from an image I saw. So sometimes it's an image, sometimes it's an action, and sometimes it's a picture. And I remember I mentioned to you or showed it to you my YA novel, Whose Doll Is This? This was inspired by a picture of my mother as a young girl. This is my mother when she was 7 years old in Palestine, in Haifa, holding her doll. And so, I mean, I was fascinated by her picture. It was in black and white, but, you know, the designer changed it here. And I wrote a whole novel about that, about but it wasn't about my mother, but about the picture itself kind of encouraged me to write, the story of how they left Palestine and where they went and what happened to them in the diaspora.
And that's one of the books we have in our collection.
Yeah, you probably have another cover for it, don't you? Or is it the same cover?
It's a different cover.
Yeah, we changed the cover.
I'm going to ask the next question, Taghreed, and change it a little bit, if that's okay. So I didn't mention that I've spent some time in Jordan also researching women authors in Jordan, and right now I'm writing about Samiha Khrez, and a couple of other authors that I'd like to explore more. So I know that the publishing world in Amman is, it's substantial, maybe not comparable to Cairo, but it's a much smaller city. But we kind of wondered about the state of publishing in Arabic for children in Amman. Is it a robust industry? Is it something that sort of has fits and starts? And then I don't know if you want to say something about publishing for children in the region as well.
That's a good question, because this was actually the paper that I presented at Cairo Book Fair about how children publishing in Jordan. And usually, as you said, it's not substantial because we are much smaller. But I think, and that's what I was trying to say, that we're in a good place. Because we have many dedicated people in Jordan to children publishing, most of them women, and the experience with children publishing in the Arab world, it's all recent, not like Europe. For example, in Jordan, you would say that publishing as a publishing industry, let's say, not as writing books here and there, but as publishing industry. It kind of started in the late 70s. And it was then that, the government and people around started getting interested in the field, and people started experimenting. And before that, we used to get books from Egypt, Lebanon, Syria, and most of them, or many of them, were translated books. So when the industry started, it started in the late 70s, which was about the time that I started. So I kind of, went through all the stages. And we're lucky because many of the women I mentioned, they all started by self-publishing, publishing their own books. And then we turned it into a business. For example, I started self-publishing. I started with publishers first, and then found out that I was doing all the work of a publisher, and decided to start my own publishing house. And but at the same time, when I first started, I couldn't publish for other writers, so I was almost self-publishing. But then now my publishing house, a Salwa publishing house, is viable and a well-known publishing house. And it wasn't only me. After that, like a lot of women, like 3, 4, 5 women, all did the same. They started self-publishing and then now have their own publishing houses, which are very well known. So we're not prolific. We don't have that many books, but the books that we produce are very well accepted. We win, people in Jordan win a lot of awards from, regional places, book fairs and all that. At the same time, we have a lot of interest in, people writing, and we don't have many illustrators in Jordan. We have a few, but not enough. So, but at this point in time, we're lucky because with the internet, the whole world is available for us for, illustration and graphics and all that.
Great, thank you.
I was interested when we were talking last fall, when you're publishing books and knowing that there's modern standard Arabic and there's colloquial Arabic, and you're also trying to reach across the region, how do you shape books with that in mind?
Yeah, well, we write all of our books in modern standard Arabic, because it's very, it's not viable for us to write in colloquial. Not only will it not be accepted, it will not be understood even in the same country. So maybe Caroline knows in Egypt, I mean, there are so many different accents. So if the Saidi will use a different kind of dialect than the person in Alexandria, than the person in Cairo. So imagine the nightmare if you have to write a book. Which dialect would you choose for this? We use the colloquial language in dialogue, in a novel or something like that, but very, not that much, just enough to give flavor to the novel. Because if we do, then we get in trouble with the authorities of the Arabic language, people who are in charge in education and schools and all that. They will not accept it. And they will, but there are, in Egypt and in somewhere else, there are experiments where people believe that this is very important, and they have started writing in the colloquial language. And they find some kind of success, because they say for the very early ages, it's important for them to use the language that they use at home. And then later on, they can transition to classical Arabic. While other schools say there are many shared words between colloquial and classical, and what we should do is kind of try to find somewhere in between, where we use the words that are classical, but actually also used in colloquial speech.
This is something that Salwa Baker in Egypt does a lot of. I mean, obviously she's writing for a rather sophisticated adult audience, but she's fascinated with the dialectic between the standard Fusha and colloquial Amiya. And so she doesn't, she would always say that she didn't want to write only in colloquial, because especially as a woman writer, she felt she kind of had to prove that she was really, competent in the illustrious standard language. But she wouldn't even really write too much dialogue in Amiya, but she would find, the words that the colloquial words that had strong relationship to the standard words. And so she would call the language she used, she would call it al-Amiya al-Fasiha, which means the almost like the proper colloquial, or something between colloquial and standard. But I didn't know that this was going on in children's writing, really. I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah, I mean, there's somebody called Rihan. She lives in the US, and so she found that the people who live outside of the Arab world find it even more difficult, because they don't listen to classical Arabic on television, or they are not faced with it anywhere. So she started, for her children, she started writing or rewriting some books in colloquial Egyptian, and it worked. And actually, as a child, I remember we used to get magazines from, like, Mickey Mouse. I mean, these were translated, of course, from Disney, but they were in the Egyptian dialect. Do you remember, Fahad? I don't know if maybe before your time.
Yeah, I remember very well. It's probably because the publishers were Egyptian, so.
Yeah, but as a child reading Mickey in colloquial Egyptian, I loved it, and I learned a lot of Egyptian words. Like, they would say, for ice cream, would say buza, and they would say gilati. I mean, this word I learned from the magazine. So there are, pros and cons for every choice we make, I think.
But how widespread would you say is it? I mean, it strikes me like it's still a limited percentage of what's produced is produced in colloquial.
It's very, very limited. There are some Palestinian writers who did that. There are some Lebanese. There are, people who live in the States, like Egyptians or even Palestinians or Jordanians, who tried this. But it's like I can count on, the number of books that came out in colloquial, especially for children, because people don't accept that. So it's a niche market. It's people who are convinced will go for these books.
I want to go back, if you don't mind. You do paint a picture of the publishing world as very open. Is it really that open? I mean, I'm thinking of barriers to entry for new writers who want to, maybe take a stab and write and publish. Is it really that open? And is it an open system? Can anyone really make an entry that is not too difficult?
Well, Fahad, it's not open because it's very hard to publish a book and to, as a publisher. I mean, we can't accept anybody who presents us with a document. Like any publishing house, we need to see whether it can be a good fit for our collection, and if it's a subject that we'd like to talk about in our books. So, I mean, there are lots of variables. So, but there are no, if you write a book, a good book, you can publish it anywhere.
Sure.
Especially, I'm talking about children's books. I don't know if you mean books with political implications, and that's something else. I mean,
no, I understand that side of the. I mean, in our societies, it is the contours are very, very clear. No, I'm talking about children's books. I'm just wondering about the newcomers, those who aspire to join in. I mean, do you think the road is paved, or is it the door is open, or is it?
Well, it's never easy for any writer to enter the world of unless that writer is really good and can prove himself or herself in the field. So it has nothing to do with Jordan or anywhere. I think it's the same anywhere in the world, where a writer has to be a good writer, and what he writes is something that people want to read.
Okay.
We're such a small group. I wonder who else might have questions. We can kind of mix them up with what Caroline and I both had.
Hello, we see Dan here. Hi, Dan. Yes. Do you have any questions?
I have a question.
Oh, Mirvat. Okay.
Yeah.
Saved by the bell.
So I have a question, like, do you, as a well-known writer, do you get any I don't want to say help, but I say like funds from the government inside, like in Jordan, or any source, like as a way to encourage, women to be more like well-known in that region? Like, is there any source of help or from those non-governmental organizations as a way to encourage those women to be? We have more like Arab writer women in the Middle East, or even outside the Middle East.
No.
Oh, unfortunately.
We're on our own.
Oh, okay.
We have been on our own. But I mean, the NGOs sometimes help by, for example, USAID helped by coming to Jordan and gifting government schools or the Ministry of Education with a lot of books that they chose from the local writers. And so local writers and local publishers. So that was a great help because usually distribution is a problem for publishers.
Yeah.
And you have to understand, I mean, if you know our area, you will see why it's difficult. I mean, look at what's going on around us. We have millions who speak the Arabic language, but we can only reach a small number with our books because of the cost. Like, for example, now in Egypt, they have problems, economic problems.
Yeah.
So our books are too expensive for them in
Yeah.
dollar. Lebanon has problems, as you all know. Maybe Syria has war. So all these countries, Iraq was really a beacon of for all of us when we started in the 70s. It was one of the best in producing Arabic children literature, and then it's up in the air. So we have this problem where in the Arab world we don't have, let's say, markets to sell our books. We only have markets in the book exhibitions. When we go to big exhibitions, then there we get to meet our customers and all that. So that's difficult, Merwat. I mean, nobody comes and says, "Oh, let's have more." We don't. It's not a problem of having writers because there are many talented people.
Yes.
It's just a problem of distributing and all that.
Yes. I have another question, if you don't mind.
Sure. Go ahead.
Yeah. What is one of the most dear topics that you dear to you when you were writing about children? Like, I remember I used to go to the library, like, you know, I was raised and born in Jordan. So I used to walk like, I don't know, 10 minutes to go to the library because I used to love to read. But for me, it was kind of, I didn't have a lot of resources there. I mean, I used to I don't know if you remember this series called Al-Maktab Al-Khadra, this series. I used to love to go there and read, but there was different stories about it. But to you, what was the most dear topic that when you wrote about children that was really like to write about, something about children? Or, you know, or there is no certain topic that you like to write about?
For children?
Yes,
I mean,
yeah, something that is really, that's resonated with you, something really, really, you wrote about it and you really like it. Your most favorite one, let's say.
I think it's not just one book. It's empowering girls and women, because when I started, most of the books available were written about the boys were the main character, and so when I started, I had to rethink about this. Even I kind of changed the way I thought, because when I started, I would think about a story, and the first thing that would come to my mind would be that the boy would be the main character. But then when I became conscious and I started reading about women's movements in the world and all that, and it was pointed out how important it was for girls to read about themselves doing different things, not just in the kitchen or doing the regular. And so, Mirvat, this is what I think, if you look at my books, you'll find that this theme goes through in many of my books, where I try to empower girls in one way or the other. Another thing that I like to write about is creativity. I mean, changing something out of nothing. So I have like craft books about how to make different crafts from egg carton pulp or toilet rolls, and also how to use something in different ways. For example, I have one book about a piece of cloth given by a mother to her kids, and what the kids did with this piece of cloth. So this is like a theme. I find myself going back to every so often.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Yeah, you mentioned something about your favorite. You wrote a book about a photo of your mother holding a doll. Can I know? Can you tell me what's the name of that book?
لمن هذه الدمية?
Okay,
Whose doll is this?
I can't see it very well, but
You can't see? Is this
let's see.
better?
Oh,
Can you
Lex,
see it?
she's wearing something on her hair. Is that a veil or something?
No,
doll?
she's not wearing a veil. The doll is wearing a hat.
Oh, a hat. Oh, okay.
And Nedvat, that book is in the UWM library in the curriculum collection in Arabic.
Okay, that would be interesting to go on and look at it. Yeah, okay.
And
Okay.
let me know what you think after you read it, Marvat.
I will. I will.
Taghreed, I have a question. You mentioned creativity, if I might. I know we're completely off our list of questions, but I think we're having a nice conversation. So, so Taghreed, I was thinking about, I don't know if you know that the children's author in Egypt, Naghla Alem. She has somebody that I met a long time ago, and she's been writing children's books ever since. But when we first sort of started talking about, you know, how she started writing and you know, she would say, you know, that she was just a child that kind of liked to sit by herself. She was very introverted. She started trying to write stories when she was a very young child. But she said that it was interesting that she also really loved poetry, and that poetry was a major inspiration for her children's books. And I was just wondering if that was something that you had ever experienced, or that you'd ever heard other children's book authors talk about, because there's such a parallel in terms of kind of the elliptical nature of prose in poetry and children's writing, which has to be evocative, has to bring forth images, but often it's not a lot of text.
Yeah. To tell you the truth, no. I have not been inspired by poetry as such. You know, I love poetry. I used to love reading it to my kids when they were young. But this was not a major inspiration for me. But as for being an introverted child, that I was. The first part of your
Thank you.
Have you been to Haifa? Is Haifa present in your books, or is
Yeah, Haifa is present, and I visited. My mother's family stayed in Haifa, and I got a chance to visit them in Haifa. But my mother passed when I was 6 years old. So I mean, this is a picture of her as a young child. I don't remember her as an adult.
So do you write a lot about Palestine, Haifa? Is that a theme that is
Very much so, as Julie knows. I explained to her, don't want to bore you, but I have 3 of my young adult books are about Palestine. One of them is, I have it here, and one of them is about Gaza, and it's about inspired by a true story about a fisher woman. In fact, if she was a girl, 14 years old. I was in my car and I heard the news item on the BBC saying that interviewing a 14-year-old girl and saying that she has become the first fisherwoman in Gaza. But then she was facing a lot of difficulties, you know, as from her very conservative society, and also from the Israeli occupation and the naval ships that were there and how they were treating them. So this is the story. I don't have the Arabic copy, but this is it was translated into Italian, and it is called Sitt al-Kull, Fahad.
Oh, okay.
Sitt al-Kull is it's hard to translate to English. So in English, I said I changed the title to Against the Tide, which. And the third novel about Palestine also is called Lugz Ayn al-Saqar, and this is about my father's village in Palestine. It's called Lift Up, and it's really near Jerusalem. It's part of Jerusalem now, almost. It was depopulated by the Israelis, in 1948.
Other questions?
I had a question. You said that a lot of your works are translated into multiple languages, and I was wondering, like, what languages are they translated into? And do you find that there's like a particular international market? Because you said the local market is limited. Is there a particular international market that's really like connecting with these stories that you're writing?
Yeah, I'll tell you that the language, for example, this is Italian, and this novel is now being translated into Italian also. But I really can't answer this question because I don't know how it's. I hear that people in schools read it and they interact with it, and I think that's really great because when we talk about diversity, and we learn about other people through literature. So when people read about something, it's like as a child, I read about the World War. I read about wars in different places, not only wars, about how people in different places live. And that's how I learned about other cultures. You asked about the languages. For example, this one is translated into Swedish and Danish. And we have, of course, English, Turkish, Macedonian, but I don't know what effect they have. We don't have any statistics for me to be honest and tell you about that. I mean, they're not bestsellers, that I know for sure.
Maybe going off of Dan's question, could you share a bit about the story you told me with Arabic books in Swedish libraries? Just
which one? Remind me.
Mainly in terms of responding to refugee populations.
Yeah.
Because of trying to build the international collection at UWM and just learning from other examples around the world, just what you learned.
In Sweden, they believe that they have a lot of refugees now, and even before that. So they believe that every child has the right to learn their native language. And they start from this point. And because of that, they provide tutoring for any child anywhere in Sweden who asks to learn their language. So, for example, they will pay for a tutor to take a train ride, 2-hour train rides once a week to go to a village somewhere to teach somebody their own language, not just Arabic, can be any language that they have from the population of refugees that they have there. They also make sure that all libraries, when you go to the library, you find a variety of books in all languages. And they invite writers from different parts of the world to come and read books to the people who, for example, they invited me so that I would go to schools and read Arabic stories to Arabic children there. And the idea is that the children, they would feel proud that, somebody from their language had come to visit and interact with them. So I think that this is really great. Another thing for the libraries, which I found interesting, was that to encourage people to go to the library. That was some time ago. I don't know if things changed in Sweden because I've been there like a few times. They had the clinic in the library. So when the refugee community, which lived nearby, wanted to go to the clinic, they had to go to the library. And slowly they would read stories to the children and make sure that the children, tell them how important it was to read books in Swedish and in their native language.
Wow.
Thank you.
That's a wonderful idea.
Yeah.
So it's beautiful.
That's a wonderful concept, that this idea of a right of a refugee to learn their own language. I wonder if that extends to heritage students too. I mean, those who are born in Sweden and they grow up in Sweden, if they really, look at those two with that kind of right, that's pretty amazing, really.
It is amazing.
Yeah, I'm not sure if they do, but
I hope they still do it. As I said, this was, things are changing so fast. With now they have a very rightist government who don't want the refugees to be there. So I mean, things will change very quickly. But the idea is really great that you respect, other cultures, and this is when we talk about diversity. This is what it means. That people can be proud of their roots and learn the new language at the same time.
yeah, historically, this is off topic, but maybe not too much. But historically, the Muslim lands have had a brush with that. I'm really working on that issue right now. For example, the Shahnama, basically. The Shahnama is the premier work in Persian. And it was written when Persian was really coming back into becoming known and learned within Baghdad at the 11th century. So it's really an interesting mix of how these things happen, how they are preserved and allowed the space to flourish.
Yeah.
So very interesting, yeah.
Julie, do we still have a little time, or do we need to?
We've gone a little over what I had promised, but maybe we have time for one more question, Taghreed.
Sure.
Okay. Do you have something, Carolyn, you'd like to ask?
Well, I do, and Taghreed, if this is not something you're comfortable answering, please just say. So I'm always interested in questions of censorship, and of course I understand that. For Palestinian artists and writers in Jordan, there can be certain challenges that might not be faced for other elements of the population. But do you, when you write about the Palestinian experience, do you feel a sense of a need to self-censor what you write, what you explore, or have you ever encountered censorship from the Jordanian government?
Regarding the Palestinian issue, no, not at all.
Okay, good. That's good.
No, not at all, because of what I'm saying and the way I'm saying it. I'm not. It's a story about a family, so it's a human interest story rather than a political story. The political, what is happening in the background is the political thing, and it's all facts. I mean, I'm not making it. When I say there is a wall that divides people, there is a wall. When I say that people are being harassed, they're being harassed and kicked out of their houses. They're being kicked out of their houses. So, I mean, all of these you can find.
Well, no, but that often does not stop censors from not wanting people to talk about it, even if it's true, right? I mean, and maybe
right.
I think in Egypt, where I'm so used to working, censorship is just a lot harsher, and so that's why I ask. But that's interesting to know that if you talk about, Israeli violence and what's happened to the Palestinian people and impact on children, I'm sure you're writing in a very sensitive way. But I mean, it's interesting to know that that nobody's sort of, trying to massage it or to cool down the tone of whatever it is. So.
No, not about this issue. If I was writing about something happening in Jordan and government and the political situation, maybe there would be censorship. But I mean, that's not what I'm writing about. So I'm safe there. But there are a lot of taboos. Let me put it this way, and the taboos are not from the governments, from society itself, because society is conservative, and you have all sorts of people. You have a range of there are people who are open-minded and who accept things, and there are people who, think that every other thing is taboo. I've had one story of mine where the little girl, 3-year-old, is wearing a bikini, and somebody refused the book in the Ministry of Education for kids because the girl was wearing a swimsuit. I mean, we have ridiculous things like that. But we also have a big issue about transgender, and which is what you are in the world of children literature in the West are now discussing. I mean, that's totally taboo in our part of the world.
Did you write anything in the that takes place in the camps and the Palestinian in the refugee camps?
Sure. I mean, these books are, as I said, it's a human interest story, but the setting is the political situation before and after.
I think we will end here. Taghreed, really appreciate your time.
Yeah.
It's so nice to see you.
Same here, and I really enjoyed our talk. So thank you for inviting me. And if there are questions from the students, I'd be happy to answer them from anybody.
Sarah, I think, has her hand up, or is that a bye? Is that a good bye?
I think she's clapping wildly.
Okay. So, yeah, شكرا
عزيز
كثير
عزيز
دكتور
شكرا جزيلا.
فرصة كثير
فرصة
شكرا
سعيدة.
كثير فرصة سعيدة.
Very happy.
نضع على الاتصال.
Thank you.
Bye.